The argument, of course, is this shouldn't discourage somebody from going in there. It's a legal activity. It's not like we're talking about an illegal activity.
My question is, what do you want us to do on this? We have no control though. It's the Board of Selectmen in the planning and zone. You want our blessing? I think it's a good ordinance. I read it all. I think you did a good job over here. But bottom line is,
I would
you want
think,
our blessing? Or
certainly.
you're just making us aware, or what?
Well,
What do
two
you want
things.
to do?
I think that you all should look at the ordinance because the requirements in it, to a certain degree, include the operation of the department which you control.
It's the chief of police. I
Right.
know what his name is in there.
Right, so
And the selectmen too.
I fully think it's appropriate for you to look at it from the context of this operationally won't work for some reason, and I'm not pointing to any particular part of the ordinance, but if you came to me and said, we've reviewed this as a commission and our administrators, our chief and his senior officers have looked at this and this is a problem, we would recommend you don't do this, or if you're gonna do this, you do it in a different way.
So you
We're
would,
certainly open to that, because we're not trying to create something which becomes an administrative nightmare for your department, or you might say, this, you may not think this, but this is really pretty expensive. You want us to do this, well, that's okay, but it's gonna cost a lot of money to do it. And I don't know what that is, Mr. Chairman. It could be processing I have no expertise in that sort of thing.
I'd like to, along that line, you touched on applications and licensing, and a question came to my mind, I think you alluded to it, and maybe I've gotten it wrong. We talk about the proprietor actually applying on an application and a licensing, and did you say as well that the dancers themselves, the performers,
Yes.
would apply
They would-
for be able to.
Right, in order to work there, they'd have to apply for a license. And again, it would require some background check to confirm that, they don't have a criminal record.
And if they had a criminal record, is this ordinance going to preclude them from doing that?
If you had a criminal record for some sort of felonies, it would be a disqualified.
It specifies certain statutes.
Yeah, like sexual assault, that sort of thing, prostitution, it'd be a disqualifier.
My question on that same issue is, who sets the fee schedule? for the
That would
application
be,
for
set, we would initially set it with the ordinance, and it probably, in our town, it would have to be, I suppose, changed by ordinance, by town meeting. We didn't put a fee schedule in, it's one of the things we were looking at. The kind of numbers I've seen, sort of top-end numbers, $1,000 to $2,000 for a proprietor license, and something less, $500 to $200 for an entertainer's license. And good for a year, have to be renewed, which is probably an easier process. The difficulty that you see in some of the cases is, not surprisingly, the turnover in entertainers at these kind of establishments is pretty frequent. Nobody sort of is an exotic dancer at the pool table magic in Windsor Locks for 5 years or something.
The town does the
Generally, I
licensing?
would say,
The town does the licensing?
the town has to do the licensing, yeah.
I would suggest that you keep the fee schedule out of the ordinance.
Well, we have to adopt something.
We could put that in initially, but then say it's to be determined by either the Board of Selectmen and the Police Commission or somebody, because then we have to go to a town meeting every time we want to change it.
Well, it's one of these things that I don't think you're gonna change frequently. I mean, my guess is you might modify it once in your first 5 years, but this is not a fee schedule that you're gonna bump every year.
You're gonna have to have fingerprints, photos.
Well, that's one thing in this list, it doesn't include a photo. I don't know if that's something you've seen elsewhere.
How are we gonna know who
Do we add photo to that?
I mean, I think we could. It's, I guess the question is, do we have do we require them to furnish a photo? Do we take a
It'll
photo?
be during fingerprints. Here allows us to take fingerprints.
Right,
Maybe at that time. you
Yeah,
could
take a
issue
photo.
the issue.
Otherwise,
your
you're
friend
not
is
gonna
doing a
know
photo.
who you approved
yeah,
is
absolutely.
actually on
Let me look at that.
Okay.
This, yeah, as you can see, it's a really
Right.
detailed ordinance, and sometimes what I do is somebody throws out the issue, and then I literally, you have to comb it to, cause it's there, it's just, finding it is,
Okay.
it's a bit of a difficult process. And there's also a process in there, if somebody's denied, there's gotta be a process to appeal it, and then even take it to court, because again, it goes into, again, that gray area that to a certain degree, what we are doing is what's known as a prior restraint of someone's rights.
Is there gonna be comment in the input,
That's
sir?
all right.
There's public comment at the end of the.
That's all I wanted to know.
Is East Hartford,
Do they go through this application process with the formers?
They do, yeah, they do. Now, let me say that since they've adopted the ordinance, they initially had two sexually oriented businesses operating in town and applications for two more. They're actually down to the one sexually oriented business now. I can't remember the name of it. But and my understanding is it's not really doing real well. But, part of it is, when you put legitimate, when you think about these kind of restrictions, most businesses could sort of easily, withstand that kind of scrutiny. These kind of businesses, again, because of what they attract and how they're operated, it tends to be more difficult for them to withstand this kind of scrutiny, frankly.
say something?
As we were speaking here, and I'm very cognizant of the fact that we have many businesses up there. How about the advertisements? Is there anything about advertising, you could walk on the highway and all of a sudden see 3 or 4 dancing girls up there, or nude parlors, or something like that?
Yeah.
VIP,
What?
VIP.
VIP,
Yeah,
yeah.
the one thing that the town can't do is limit their signage, any more than they would for any other business. So if business A next door has a sign that's so big, they have to be allowed a sign that's so
Well,
big.
they're not
So
that big
see, it's
up
gotta
there,
be,
yeah.
it has to be neutral in that sense. Now, if they were to put something on a sign that's inappropriate language or something, that you could prevent, okay, and that's already sort of built into our zoning ordinance.
But someone said, from here, this is a VIP lounge, new dancing.
Well, you know what,
Can you
yeah,
put,
if they put that on their sign and it's within the sign reg, I imagine they could do it.
The
Now,
flashing
now-
lights.
The one thing they couldn't do is advertise something that they can't do there, because they can't do under our ordinance nude dancing, but they said, exotic dancing or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
there's probably very little you can do.
How about a
As
girl
long as it's
in
within
the cage out there, a girl in the cage?
Girl in the cage, man. I guess we wouldn't have to worry about it in January.
Does East Windsor have, anything on this?
I didn't look at very much in East Windsor. They had some initial opposition to the place that went in there, but I found it to be frankly pretty weak. I don't think they really took a very strong look at it. And there is there's a general sort of sense, and I wanna say this, I've not gotten this feeling from any of the town officials that I've spoken to with regard to this. The chairman here, the first selectman, members of the Board of Selectmen, members of the Police Commission, members of the Planning and Zoning. But in some places you get a sense like, well, they're allowed to do this, so kinda just leave them alone, And, if you have that sense of it, then, they're gonna exist. And so, this is not, I'm not gonna pretend that this is an easy fight, it's not. I'm not gonna tell you that we're gonna pass an ordinance and everything is gonna be okay, cause it may not. But I have a strong sense that everyone in the community all the elected officials I've talked to and public officials who are at the forefront of this, is they recognize that this is not, give the devil its due, they're entitled, but this is not a good activity, a good type of use for a business in town. That it's not gonna in any way help our community or be a positive for our community. And so, we will live with it if we have to, but we want to make sure that we regulate it and scrutinize it to the maximum that we're allowed by law, and to exercise our rights. And so I do appreciate you inviting me here, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that very much. I appreciate, again, everything that all the public officials that I've worked with in town, many of whom I know personally, I do appreciate them working with me on this. I think it is an important issue. We try to stay away from, as you can see in my talk and in the name of our group, we're not approaching this from a moral standpoint. That's for every individual to work at and look at, and it's not for us to say, so we're not moralizing about the activity. What we are saying is, anybody that looks at the studies that were done over the last 30 years, there are very bad effects that come out of these kind of activities. And young girls especially are subject to being exploited because they're vulnerable, right? Don't have a good job, don't have a good education, where else can I make, $200 or $500 a night? At least that's the gateway in, right?
Sure.
And as people who have been involved, working with people that have been through that, it's more of a myth than a reality, and so we're not approaching it from that moral standpoint, but from the fact that it is not a wholesome activity in terms of what it generates for the rest of the time. You don't increase property values. And one interesting thing is some of the studies find that communities that are most vulnerable in terms of bad effects are small communities. And if you think about that, it's because, first of all, a large city has such diversity to it that, one small activity, you know what I mean, you can really sort of limit its issue. And, big cities have resources, right? I mean, they have all kinds of health, safety, inspector, you know what I mean? They can put resources at this type of problem. We just financially can't do. But my group is committed, and to this, in this sense, we've said to every commission, if you have an issue in finance that comes to us because it's needed to make this thing work, then let us know what it is and we'll look at it, and if we support it, we will support it fully. We'll support it here, we'll support it before the Board of Finance, we'll support it at the town meeting, we'll support it at the referendum. Because we think it's important of an issue, so.
I just want to thank you for coming here tonight, really, you and your group for being at the forefront of this issue. I like the ordinance, I read it a few times, and
Good.
I think you did one heck of a job putting it together.
I'm gonna leave this package with you if I can, Mr. Chairman. It's just, the backup material. Obviously, you guys don't have to read it, but it's, you can have it as part of your record to make available or to look at. If you'd like additional copies, we'll make them available for you. And again, if anyone at any point, if you, your commission, or anyone from the department has any kind of input that they'd like to put, again, through me, through Selectman's office, through the town attorney, they've all had this material. We've discussed it at length. We're going through a review process now to try to balance this against the existing ordinances, because there's some conflicts that we're trying to eliminate so that there's no confusion. We will take the comments that you've given me tonight and in the past, and certainly try to get those, into the ordinance, especially with regard to the outside surveillance, which I think was a really good idea. And then the issue of signage for surveillance and also a photo. That would seem very appropriate, so I will look at that. I'm surprised it's not in there, that's why I'll have to look at it to see, I don't wanna be redundant.
I didn't see it in there, but it could.
Yeah, exactly. Look, it takes me 10 minutes to find it. There's a section on there on licensing entertainers, but you gotta look for it to find it. Took me about 10 minutes reading it to finally get to it. I knew it was there, it's just rare.
Well, ask your assistant, Oliver. I'm
Yeah,
looking
that's
for you.
right.
Is this sort of business, are there any additional requirements for liquor license when you're in this sort of business?
They're really, that's sort of a difficult question to answer. Generally, there is of the actual operation.
Have
What
a
they
cocktail
intend,
party up there.
except they want exact answers. I appreciate your time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for coming, you did a
Thank
super
you.
job, you did a good job.
And I will hang around for your public comment. I will stay for public comment
Okay.
if that's helpful.
Hey, Eddie. Don't laugh at some of you.
Ah, damn it. I was
No,
hoping-
sorry.
This precludes, the ordinance won't let you.
That's right.
All
Gotta
right.
stay away from my
Have a pillow.